Hey, welcome back. All right, in this video, we're going to talk about the technologies that mediate meeting our need for shelter. Remember, shelter we're defining here as keeping ourselves safe from the elements. So, too hot, not too cold, keeping ourselves dry. We're basically just going to talk about two in this video. We're going to talk about permanent housing and we're going to talk about HVAC or heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. So super simple things that most of us are, well, probably all of us are very familiar with. So permanent housing, the big pro is that you've got comfort and a reliable place to be. Remember that our hunter-gatherer ancestors had temporary housing, which was fine, but and had some advantages, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But it wasn't something that was sturdy, that was going to keep them safe from storms, that type of thing. So the pros are kind of obvious. The cons for it, a little bit less so. So there's this term that's called nature deficit disorder. And basically what it means is, because we have these relatively nice places to be, we tend to be inside a lot. So remember, our species evolved to be outside almost all the time. We would go inside temporary shelters to sleep, and otherwise we were outside. For most of us, that's a really unusual experience nowadays. In fact, Americans, the average American spends 90% of our time inside. That's just normal to us. I'm aware of this issue, and I spend almost all of my time inside unless I'm going out to exercise. But there are serious consequences to us spending this much time inside. Again, something that helps us with our shelter, but has this negative consequence. This is the trade-off. We get a lot less movement than our hunter-gatherer ancestors do. We both have a reduced fitness level compared to them, but we're also just generally moving less as well. It has serious mental health consequences. We have an increase in stress when we're not out in nature, increase in anxiety, increase in depression, a lower sense of well-being, purely not based on the fitness component, purely based on not being outside in nature. It's taking which kind of makes sense when you think about us as an animal species. If you take any kind of animal and take it outside of its normal environmental context, it's going to have consequences for it. We've done that en masse, for good reason. I mean, the trade-off is we are almost always safe from the elements now, but the trade-off is pretty significant mental health deterioration. It has a negative effect on our attention, and this is an important thing for students in particular. I mean, all of this is important, but in terms of attention, we have the tendency to think of ourselves of our brains as like computers that just you take a brain, you input information, it processes it, and then deals with it. But that metaphor is seriously flawed. A computer will work equally well whether you put it in a dark room or a light room, or put it outside on the porch, or put it with a bunch of other computers, or put it by itself. Computers just work the way they work. Human brains don't. And so in terms of our attention, first of all, we evolved to pay attention to the outside world. And that's not the type of thing that you are studying for the most part, certainly not in my class, but for the most part in college. We study and we end up working with manipulating symbols. We usually do it inside, at least if you're on a college career track. So that's point number one. Your brain did not evolve to deal with that. And so that's going to be particularly taxing. The solution to that, very importantly, is not to go on social media or to watch TV or to watch a movie. I mean, obviously those things are breaks from your routine, but what you evolved to need is breaks in nature, to get outside, to be unplugged, and to be soothed by just the rhythm of what is our natural habitat. In fact, people who have suffered from concussions and who are recovering from that, when they concentrate too long, the prescription for them is to get outside into nature, spend time there, and allow that connection to sort of replenish your attentional reserves. Yeah, and then the last thing I want to mention about that about the effect of nature deficit disorder. Oh, I should have put quotation marks at the beginning. Sorry about that. Is it has been related to higher rates of aggression and behavioral problems in children. You guys are probably out of that at this point, but you can think about the fact that if you are, the most extreme examples of being inside is solitary confinement, which drives every person crazy. It's a form of torture. You being inside all the time isn't torture, obviously. I mean, hopefully you live in a relatively nice place. But it obviously isn't torture, but it also obviously isn't what you evolved to be in, and that's going to have detrimental consequences. Okay, so our first technology, permanent housing, has got some cons with it. What about heating, ventilation, and air conditioning? Yes, in a different way. So the pro for this is that we can control the weather, which is, let's just take a break and take a pause and recognize that that's a superpower. You can, with a flick of your finger or a push of a button, change the temperature, make it drier in your apartment or in your home. Those things are kind of incredible. You can make it as comfortable as you want. We are safe from both heat and from cooling in that. But there's a cost. It is run by, for the most part, electricity, sometimes natural gas. In either case, 60% of our electricity and 100% of our natural gas comes from fossil fuels. Burning fossil fuels contributes to climate change. Climate change increases the heat in the summertime, but also the intensity of winter storms and summer storms as well. Which means while we are meeting this need for shelter, and protecting ourselves from the elements, we're also stirring up the elements, increasing the risk that they pose for us. So that's not great. The trade-off, theme 1 from this class. Okay, that's all I want to say about the technologies that mediate meeting the need for shelter. In the next video, we're going to talk about technologies that mediate the need for safety. I'll see you in that one.